I'm Enzo.
And I'm Reina.
And this is the Date Night Horror Show. What an excellent day for an exorcism. Reina, this is going to be such an amazing episode for me. Ever since I can remember, I have coveted the original Exorcist. I consider it the godfather of horror films.
110%.
It's still one of the scariest movies I've ever seen.
It is.
And on this episode, not only are we going to review the new Exorcist Believer film that we went out and saw, we're going to go and do our first retro review.
I can't believe we have not talked about this previously. That's crazy.
Yeah, well, we tend to do more modern things.
True.
But I have gotten word from fans, that's weird to say, from listeners that they want to know what we think of an old film.
Nice, okay.
So we're going to do more of a retro review. And I figured The Exorcist is the perfect first retro review, especially since it's so current now. It's in everyone's head. A lot of my other horror friends have done what we did, which is watch the original before going to see Believer. And I figured we could do a whole episode about it, right?
I'm excited.
But be warned. Be warned. I might get possessed in the middle of this entire episode and start yelling weird shit like...
He will.
Listeners, I was saying I love kitty cats, but what you're going to hear is it in reverse. So it's going to sound really creepy. You want to try one? Just blabber off something strange. Just something, anything you can think of.
Football, yeah.
I don't know.
Do it again.
Football, yeah.
Okay, so Reina was saying, I love to fart. But since we're playing it backwards, it sounds really creepy and weird, right? Okay.
Couldn't think of anything, but yeah, whatever.
So one of the questions I wanted to ask you, even before we get started, since this is our possession episode, what do you think it is about possession films that really hits a nerve for people?
Well, of course, I feel like for me, in our Hispanic traditions, there's just so much about, how much respect you have for priests, and how much, a lot of people go to priests for counseling and advice, and just the traditions of the church altogether, the saints, like all that stuff.
Yeah.
And I feel like Hispanic people have a very real fear of demons and the devil.
Yeah, it's kind of
true. I really do.
It's kind of true. Like,
it is.
For one thing, Mexican Catholicism is a bit bloodier.
Yeah.
And I read somewhere that the reason that is because when the colonizers came and were trying to coerce the native people into Catholicism, they had to make it bloody because they were used to kind of blood sacrifice and things like that. So if you grew up Mexican with Catholicism, the depictions of Christ are really bloody.
Right.
Like, it's really weird and creepy. So the mix of proper Catholicism with, like, the devil, I think it really hits a nerve with Mexican people, because growing up with a lot of people who were very pious, I remember seeing older Mexican women that were so pious that they would wear all black robes, like nuns, but they weren't nuns. Right? But they wanted to show it. And to me, they looked like witches.
They
did, because they didn't have the habit, right?
It's true.
They only had black.
True.
They would never wear a habit because that would be disrespectful.
No, never.
But they wanted to say, hey, I'm like you. And to me, they look like witches. So it's like, I think our wires are very crossed.
Yeah.
Because of superstition, Mexican superstition, Mexican folklore, and then, staunch Catholicism. I would say that Mexican Catholicism is a little bit more festive, though. Like,
yeah, I would agree with that.
Like, some of the best and rowdiest parties I've been to start at the church.
Baptisms and
baptisms, weddings,
first communions.
Yeah. So I think Catholicism in Mexican culture is a little bit more, it's just part of the culture, right? But you throw the superstition in, and then something like The Exorcist becomes this like grenade of scary.
They don't fuck with the devil. That's the thing.
Yeah, absolutely. What worked for me with The Exorcist originally, growing up as a kid, like I think I saw it when I was like 8 or 9, around there. And it stays with you because you start to think that you might be possessed. Like, oh my God, I can't sleep. Oh my God, does that mean the demon's in me? Does that, like it's that sort of thing. It's like it infiltrates. Mm-hmm. It's kind of similar to when I first saw Jaws and I was scared to take a bath.
Right.
Like to submerge my head underwater. Mm-hmm. So it's sort of a...
See, when I watched it and I was about the same age, maybe a little older, Rainbow was more like 9-ish, 10. I don't know. I felt like I saw it once it was like on TV or something.
Oh, okay. Did you watch the edited version?
I think it was HBO or something.
Oh, okay. Then it wasn't edited.
Yeah.
Yeah. I saw it on HBO a million times.
Yeah. So I never felt like I was possessed, but I felt like other people around me probably were.
Oh, that's really interesting.
Yeah. Like I was scared of other people.
Oh, wow. That's really interesting.
Yeah.
I always saw it as like, you identify with Reagan and you're like, oh, she's about, my age. This could happen to me. You know what I mean? Like it's sort of that kind of thing.
Yeah. That's cool. I wish I would have thought that.
Wow.
I wish I would have thought I could be possessed, but no.
I know our friend Alex, that was like her skis too. Like, she saw it as like, oh my God, if I let it in, it could get in me, and that sort of thing. Yeah. And it's interesting because I feel like The Exorcist and Texas Chainsaw Massacre are the two most copied horror films in history, I think. And then Jaws, of course, if you're doing a shark, film, everything.
They're not as common, I guess.
They feel derivative. Yeah. Like if you look at the palette of Texas Chainsaw, that's used everywhere.
Oh, yeah.
From like Saw to, all those 90s slasher films. Mm-hmm. Of course, every hillbilly horror film ever made.
Road Trip.
And similarly, The Exorcist has been copied, and to the point of tedium, to be quite honest with you. Every time I see something, Last Exorcism, Exorcism is Emily Rose, you always get the similar things.
Yeah.
And, I could see how for a young person, if you watch the original film, it would feel derivative, but because, it's all about timeline.
Right. But still, no one has done it quite as great as the original.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that. And when we set out to watch the original film, I was a little leery of watching it again because I have it on this pedestal.
Oh.
I have this on this horror pedestal. It's like watching The Godfather. I can watch The Godfather now, and it's still just as good. Mm-hmm. Godfather 1 and 2 are still just as good in every possible way. So I remember The Exorcist this way.
Right.
So when we set out to watch it, I was like, God, I hope this doesn't topple it, watching it again now with these eyes of, someone who watches horror so much. I guess I can tell you how I feel about it once we go into the review.
Yeah. Well, we should just go ahead and do that then.
Yeah. Is there anything else you want to say about possession before we move on?
I mean, I find it really freaky, like for sure. Like I think possession is just, the concept of it is really creepy to me. Mm-hmm. And there's very few films out there that do a great job at it.
Yeah. Well, you know what I think?
What do you think?
Okay, I got that out of my system. Are you ready for the review?
I'm ready for the review.
All right, let's do it.
And now, a retro review.
What'd you think of that new music?
I loved it.
Yeah, I made some new music for our retro review.
Very cool.
Can you read the synopsis?
Yeah. So it's when a young girl is possessed by a mysterious entity, her mother seeks the help of 2 Catholic priests to save her life. Yeah. And the film was done in 1973.
Oh, amazing.
Yeah, and it had, of course, Ellen Burstyn, who played the mom, and Linda Blair, of course, that played Reagan.
Yeah.
And Max von Sydow, who played one of the fathers. And the other one was...
Max von Sydow is one of my favorite actors of all time. He's awesome. Just saying that.
And then Jason Miller played Father Karras. Yeah,
they would say Karras, but it was because he's Italian. It was probably Karras.
Yeah. And it was directed by William Friedkin.
Oh, genius. This man was such a genius.
I was really excited to see it again. I thought it was really fun to watch it before we went to go see the new one the following day. I was really pumped up to see it, and I thought it was really cool that we were able to find the original.
Yeah. Oh, that was another great thing. So on HBO Max right now, or Max, you get the original edit of the film, which to me, I think is better. There was a later director's cut done where they added all this extra stuff.
Which was fun.
Yeah, it's fun to watch it, but for me, when you watch the original cut, there is nothing in the original cut that does not look believable.
That's true.
And in the director's cut, there's a spider walk sequence. For me, when I see it, it looks mechanical and fake. And
it's creepy though.
Conceptually it's creepy, but it doesn't hold up for me compared to the rest of the film, and I know that's why they removed it.
Well, I think you don't need it.
You don't.
It's just creepy enough as it is. Like all the scenes with Reagan being possessed, you don't need those extra things that they took out. I think they did make a good choice taking them out. I think it's cool to see it, just to see the director's cut of it.
Yeah.
But definitely, she's so amazing in how she plays the possessed Reagan that you don't really need those other elements.
I think the core point of my review is Linda Blair's performance.
Oh, yeah.
We watch a lot of horror films with children in them, and sometimes the child maybe doesn't understand the content. I was shocked at how well her part is performed, both as herself, both as Reagan possessed and Reagan possessed.
Yeah.
And then her as Pazuzu and the demon, and her as herself being possessed, trying to survive the possession. There's nuances in all those moments, and those are the things that are lacking in other people's performances when they do possession.
I think in other performances, but I think a lot has to also do with the writing of it.
Yeah.
Because I think it was just really well crafted.
Yeah, it took its time. It takes 3/4 of the film is over, and you haven't seen like the meat of the horror just yet. So, and the sense of dread is completely there throughout the entire thing. And then when it kicks into high gear, it really lives up to what all the dread it's building up to. You know?
Yeah, definitely.
But it's gradual. It's very gradual.
It's gradual. And as good as an actress as Ellen Burstyn is, I feel like Linda Blair outshined her.
Yeah, I still think Ellen Burstyn is great.
Oh, 100%.
And she's the emotional center. But yeah, the the powerhouse performance is hers. And then Jason Miller, of course, as Father Karras, he's also, there's a lot of subtlety in his performance too. He's burnt out, and he doesn't look healthy, and he's sort of lost his faith. There's layers to his performance, and I think a lot of the times the characters that are surrounding a film about possession, they're kind of one-dimensional because they're sort of just taking the backseat to the possessed.
Right.
But this whole film, every character, even the detective, is interesting and layered. And then the possession itself is layered. So it's a whole other caliber of filmmaking here.
Yeah. And then the noises she makes.
Yep. Yeah.
The noises she makes, her voice, the voice she has when she's possessed, when she channels other voices to kind of mess with the priests.
Yeah.
All very creepy.
The stuff that really made that's so unsettling is the wheezing. Like there's constant wheezing. So you start to feel anxietal, like you're having trouble breathing, even though it's all psychological. Right. But you're hearing her wheezing. And then there's pivotal moments where the demon has taken over, but sometimes you'll see Regan trying to survive the possession. So it's not her as just the monster the whole time. Like, for example, the levitation moment. You can tell it's her trying to breathe through and trying to survive, even though she can't talk. And that's kind of the layered performance that I'm talking about that other possession films tend to miss.
And the fear she has in her face. You feel so horrible for her.
Yeah, and then
Friedkin for her.
Friedkin historically was just, super punk rock and wanted the best performance possible. He wanted to capture fear on screen. So he would do things like fire guns and, and not tell his actors that he would be doing certain things to get an actual startle out of them.
Right.
And then he even slapped a priest, the priest actor in certain moments. I'll keep it vague. Just to get that performance. And I think when you have a director that's doing these kinds of things, it probably made the entire set very uneasy. And that's in the film. There's an unease throughout the entire film.
Very much so. You never feel safe or, okay, it's over, or oof. All the way through, from beginning to end. I feel like you just have all that dread and that fear all the way through.
Yeah, and last but not least, I want to say one more thing. The amazing Dick Smith did the makeup for this. He's considered the godfather of modern prosthetic makeup. And I don't think anyone has ever topped that makeup job.
No.
Like, if you really study Reagan's makeup in its final form, it is just spectacular. And to this day, I still find it very frightening. Even a still image of it.
100%.
I find frightening.
Yeah, it's very scary because it looks real.
Yeah, and just to give you a little info on him, he worked on everything from The Godfather to Taxi Driver to Scanners to Death Becomes Her.
Wow.
And he got an Academy Award for one of my favorite non-horror films, Amadeus.
Oh, wow. That's cool.
He did the makeup for Salieri in the old man form, which is incredible makeup. To this day, it's still incredible.
I didn't know that. That's pretty cool.
He was their secret weapon. Because if you didn't believe, Reagan was this other scary thing, then I think the film would have fallen apart.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Because if you thought the makeup, if you're thinking, oh my gosh, that's a little girl with makeup the whole time, the movie would just have fallen apart for sure.
Yeah, and I feel like those are the two linchpins. You have Linda Blair knowing exactly, I don't know how, she was 14 at the time.
Yeah.
Knowing exactly how to perform her parts, many parts.
Yeah.
And then you have Dick Smith's incredible masterpiece makeup work. And I think, you and I were talking, we were saying, this is probably the first time you see something like color contacts, used in a very, pronounced sort of way. There were contacts before that, but this was the most prominent use of it at the time. Now it's everywhere.
Right.
But
1973.
So yeah, it's still so good. I found the film to be just as terrifying, but now I can watch it with so much admiration, and this sounds weird, but love for the film.
That's not weird.
Because it's so spectacular. It's so well done.
That's the thing. It's not weird because, you have such an appreciation and love for horror movies that you're admiring the craft of it.
Yeah. And the patience of it. It takes its time to get there. And when it gets there, it does not. It's like a bull in a china shop. Once it goes, it goes. And then you're like, am I prepared for this?
Yeah, it's a fun ride.
Yeah. Also, I remember when we were teenagers and we rented it at Blockbuster Video. There were some key moments that were edited out.
Right.
And I remember telling you, I'm like, wait, where's the crucifix moment? Mm-hmm. And I remember this moment. I didn't dream it. And
some of the things she says.
Yeah. And in the version that's on Max, it's all restored. It's all there.
Yeah.
So, yeah. That's another thing I admire about the film is its bravery to transgress in the way that it does. Mm-hmm. I don't even think modern films do that much anymore.
No.
And it really packs a massive punch when it does that. And it really, it's one thing to say, oh, this is the villain. The villain has to show villainous things.
Right.
Has to do villainous things. You have to be scared of the villain. And those moments, those transgressive moments with Reagan, that's like it killing. Mm-hmm. Do you know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
Because what it's doing to this young girl, this innocent young girl, is so perverse that, those moments are important.
Yeah. And what it's doing to the mom, as her mother, worrying about her, can't be in the room. They don't allow her to be in the room or anything.
Yeah.
And just worrying what's going to happen, not sure if she's going to live or die. It's very, very good. All of it. Yeah. Loved it. Loved watching it again. I really enjoyed watching it again. It had been a while since we had watched it.
Yeah. So don't you think that now, like when I look at this film and I remember all the things they were saying about it, that people were running out to see this movie, and then they were fainting and passing out and stuff.
Yeah.
I completely believe it, and I'll tell you why. It's similar to when Bird Box came out on Netflix. Certain films, they get buzz, and then the mainstream watches it. This is what happened with The Exorcist. Because this film was so well made, people were saying, oh, this is going to be in the Oscar race. So all these people that normally are not drawn to horror films, they go out and see The Exorcist, and they're not prepared. Yeah. They don't have the calluses of horror. And I could see certain people fainting even now.
For sure. I think because too, it also kind of hits you in your beliefs as well.
Yeah.
So if you're very pious or you're a devout Catholic or Christian, I would completely see where that would trigger you and upset you.
Oh my God, yeah.
And it cause people to do, run out, faint, cry, whatever. Yeah, I believe it.
Yeah, I'm not super religious either, and those scenes where it transgresses with the crucifix scene, things like that, I find that stuff hard to watch too.
Oh, for sure.
It's it feels evil.
It does feel evil. I mean, there's certain things I won't mess with. I'm not getting that bad juju. No. But I even had someone that I work with, Alejandra, And she told me that her mother would tell her, you can't watch those things in your house. If you're going to go watch them in the theater, but do not watch them in your house. And she'd be like, why? And she said, because you're inviting the devil into your home if you watch it. Oh, isn't that crazy? So she's actually afraid to watch it. Well, I don't know if she's actually afraid, but, you know, she thinks twice.
Right.
So, yeah, I mean, it can mess with you.
Yeah, that's crazy. That's crazy. Yeah, now, you know, having watched it again, I just have this admiration for the film. And, you know, I really love when really harsh horror films are made, and when they're made well, and they're more than just, you know, blood splattered walls, and there's really artistry there.
Yeah.
I just have a thorough appreciation for that kind of stuff, and it's still on my pedestal. I still love this film. I still think it's the godfather of horror films.
And that's pretty incredible for something made 50 years ago.
Yeah, it's insane.
And it still holds up as one of the best and scariest horror films.
Yeah. Yeah, it's incredible. Okay, I think we're done with that review.
The original.
Yeah.
The OG.
So now let's travel over and go to Exorcist Believer. Ooh. All right, here we go.
And now, our feature review.
Okay, you ready for The Exorcist Believer?
Yeah.
When two girls disappear into the woods and return 3 days later with no memory of what happened to them, the father of one of the girls seeks out Chris McNeil, who's been forever altered by what happened to her daughter 50 years ago.
Yes.
And of course, Chris McNeil is...
Ellen Bernstein.
That's right. So she comes back.
Okay, so I'll say right off, the fact that they got Ellen Bernstein,
yeah,
I was very excited by, because her performance in the original film is so great. That is probably one of my favorite things about the film. But
I know
there's so much going on in the film, and there are a lot of original ideas in the film, but ultimately I think those original ideas work against the film and the filmmakers.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it just didn't ever pack that same punch that the original does.
Yeah,
you know, it just never gets to a place where you feel scared for the girl, you know, for the two little girls, for their families, for yourself, for, you know, you think you're going to be possessed or not. I mean, it just never packs that heavy punch of possession.
Yeah, there's early moments in the film where it's sort of is starting to get perverse and weird, but the demon elements never continue that way. Whereas I feel like in the original film, you know, once the demon starts doing things to mess with the priests, it's constant. Like it's constant, constantly pushing their faith, pushing them psychologically. And I feel like this film, the consistency of the demons it's just not there.
No. And I thought having the two girls was really interesting. The two little girls was an interesting element where I felt like, can you imagine having two Reagans?
Yeah.
You know, how scary that would be, and then having the two sets, you know, not two sets of parents, but the parents.
Yeah.
You know, and them trying to figure out what's going on with their children, and the children messing with them as the demons.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, there was just so much that could have been amazing.
Yeah.
And it just never quite got there.
Yeah, it's similar to what I'm saying. I think they had good ideas that I hadn't quite seen before. I hadn't seen a double possession before. I liked that the kids both were from different backgrounds. Also very interesting. And I'm not just talking race. You know, one
like family dynamic.
Yeah, one single dad, not that religious. Other nuclear family, very religious. You know, those dynamics were cool. The problem is they leaned into that stuff so much that they forgot about scare factor.
Right.
And you're following up the scariest movie ever made.
Right.
You're trying to connect yourself to the scariest movie ever made. That is number one on people's lists over and over and over for years and years, for 50 years. You got to lean into the scary. You can't forget it. You can't forget it.
Well, that's what makes Exorcist so great.
Yeah. And I think that is where the film loses its way. Ellen Burstyn, she's a light in the film, I feel, but then she's underutilized. Very underutilized. Yeah, she kind of comes and goes, and I won't say more. I'll say more in the spoiler zone. So to me, seeing her was great, but then ultimately she wasn't used enough.
Or as well as she could have been used.
Right, exactly. The setup of her character is interesting. I remember telling you before we went to the film, I can't wait to see what they do with her character. Like, I'm excited to see her come back. But I don't feel they did enough.
They didn't. They really didn't.
And then ultimately, the final showdown sequence feels contrived. And feels more like a trailer moment than a logical setup of how it all works. And it just flat. Yeah, it just fell very flat on its face. So for me, I wouldn't even recommend going to the theater. I think you're going to be disappointed. I think it's worth watching when it's on one of your streamers and you don't have to pay.
Yeah, because if you're an Exorcist fan,
you kind of have to watch it.
You kind of have to. Yeah. And it is part of a trilogy.
Yeah.
So you have to.
Yeah, and I'm frustrated by that too, because I feel like it is dangling a carrot at me. So I probably will give it a chance in the next couple films. Oh. You know, knowing us, we're such horror hounds, we're probably going to end up... I just really hope they learn from this first film, because... ultimately, it's very unsatisfying, and I've been reading the reviews. We're not the only ones who've said this, so yeah, it's too bad.
If you love horror, and especially if you love the first Exorcist, there's no way you couldn't agree that this one just didn't hold up to the original.
It's just not. It's not quite there.
Yeah.
Okay.
I was very disappointed, unfortunately.
Yeah. Okay, I think we're done with the main review. Shall we go into the spoiler zone?
Sure.
Yeah, let's do it. Let's go into the spoiler zone completely possessed. Yeah,
beware. Spoilers ahead. Nah, bro.
That's what I wanted to say.
Which are we spoiling first? The original?
Let's go into let's talk about the original Exorcist first, and kind of curl our toes with it a little bit, if that's okay.
Yeah.
Cool. So let me just spout off some things I want to say.
Okay.
Again, Linda Blair's performance, she should never be embarrassed of this film.
No.
She is so great in the film. And I remember watching the early scenes with her talking to her mom, and those scenes are so intimate and sweet. And I remember telling you, I'm like, oh, she kind of reminds me of Millie Bobby Brown. Like her face.
Yeah, you did say that.
Her kind of her, what her face looks like sort of reminds me of her. She does that part so well, and then she does all the subsequent steps of her becoming, Pazuzu possessed.
Right.
So well. Like, it's great. I was watching her performance very intently, and there were a few things that I loved. One, she's one of those actors that doesn't when she has a ton of makeup on, doesn't act like she has a ton of makeup on.
Mm-hmm.
And there's like super old actors that have had huge careers, and once you put makeup on them, they're like stiff as a board. So the fact that she is this child and she just goes for it,
yeah,
and is so great. A lot of the times with possession films, it can look like a little kid making a monster face.
Yeah, and over the top. Also acting over the top.
A little too over the top. Yeah. And I don't know how she did it, but her performance is like perfect. It's everything about it is perfect.
It's almost like she believes she is possessed by Pazuzu.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's not good. I mean, it's that seamless.
Yeah, it really is.
But I agree. I mean, it's really cute at the beginning because it's a very typical mother-daughter loving relationship. You know, you appreciate it because it's a single mom. The dad isn't really great at being around.
Yeah.
So they really make you care about Reagan and Chris, the mom.
Yeah.
And their relationship.
And then Ellen Burstyn, the way she plays her role too, she's kind of she's not a prima donna, but she's a little dramatic.
She's an actress.
Yeah, which I love. I like watching it again. I picked up on those, you know, like when she's talking to the operator about getting her ex-husband on the line, and she's like, "Don't tell me to calm down, God damn it!"
Yeah,
like she's like super over the top. And then so like when things start to pop off, she's just like a mess. She's like a total mess.
And a deer caught in the headlights.
Like it's sort of like a Toni Collette performance, you know, like completely rattled.
That's a good comparison.
Yeah. So those two performances are so great. Okay, so another scene I love is the world famous levitation scene. The reason it's great is Reagan has her eyes rolled back. Mm-hmm. But if you look at her performance, it's like she's trying to breathe. She's just trying to survive.
Yeah.
So she's not acting monstery. And I think, so it's like she's under control of the power that's levitating her. Mm-hmm. And she's just trying to survive.
She's trying to survive and trying to fight through it.
Yeah. So if she were acting like monstery during that part, I don't think it would work as well.
Yeah.
Like there's a lot of taste in this film, you know, or like the scene where she comes up in the shadow, which is one of my favorite moments in the film, where, you know, you see her silhouette and you see the statue of Pazuzu behind her, and both priests are looking at her and she's on the bed like that. And it's a silhouetted scene. That scene is so creepy to me. And yet there's a beauty to it.
Yeah.
It's really well shot.
I don't know if you're going to think I'm crazy, but the scene that creeps me out the most is when she speaks to the priest, Karas, as the mom.
Oh, God, yes.
That's so creepy.
That's iconic.
Me.
That's an iconic scene.
That makes my hairs
to me, Dammy?
Stand up, because I don't know, just imagine being in that position where you already have that guilt. Yeah. And then the demon uses it against him.
Yeah. Ugh. The scene she talks, she says, why you do this to me, Demi? But when he walks into the room and the mom is in the center of the bed, like that is like holy shit. Yeah. And he's like, "You're not my mother." You're not. Like it's just constantly fucking with him. Yeah. Like, you know.
But that's what it is. I think that's why people that have like that faith and Catholic guilt is a real thing. Yeah. So I think that's all of those things put together is why it's so scary.
Yeah, that's a really good point. The situation that he's dealing with his mother is kind of a Catholic guilt thing. At least at the beginning, or at least when he goes to see her in the hospital and she won't even look at him. And then he's a Harvard trained psychiatrist, yet he became a priest first. They mention it in the film, and to me, I saw it as like he did it to please his mother.
100%.
Because in Latin derivative countries, like Mexico and Italy, being a priest is viewed in a very prestigious way, especially from the old guard,
the old generation.
So I noticed that in the film, once again. So this is a man who's sort of been under his mother's influence his whole life and has done things to try to please her.
And then ultimately disappoints her.
Right. So the demon, what does he do? He uses that against...
use it against him.
Yeah.
But I thought it was in a cool way, because usually now you see possession films and it's like the priest is having sex with somebody that he shouldn't be having sex with because they're not supposed to.
Right.
So for me, using that guilt of a mother's guilt.
Yeah.
Oof. Horrible.
Yeah.
Like the worst type of guilt.
And then Father Marin, he's been fighting. So he's infamous to the demon. So the demon is calling him out. Mm-hmm. If you notice, there's scenes where it's like, where's Marin? I want... Like he's looking to get Marin in the room.
Right.
So ultimately, he kills him. So... And I think that's another brilliant thing. Something causes him to have a heart attack. So he must have he must have seen something really horrifying. And the film is already really horrifying. Yeah. So it's like, whoa. And you imagine all this stuff happening.
Yeah.
And,
and you wouldn't think it would happen. You thought he would be the one to save her.
Yeah.
Or to drive out the demon. Because he was, supposedly this seasoned priest.
Yeah.
So you thought he would be the one who would save her, and then all of a sudden he's like, out.
And it was so cool to see Max von Sydow. He was actually, I think you said like 42.
Yeah, he was in his 40s.
But he looks much older in the film,
They make him look like 60-ish almost.
Yeah, and it's interesting that they would pick him to play that role and not an older actor, an actual older actor. Which, I mean, I'm not complaining because I thought he was great.
Amazing.
And it's all those little choices that make this film so special.
Yeah, it's, again, holds up. 1973, everything about it is just well written, well crafted, makeup, well acted, everything. Has everything.
This film has a simplicity to it. If you watch the film, the entire time, even the Catholic Church is going, really? Do you really want to perform an exorcism? Like, this is psychological. Like, this, just send a psychiatrist. Like, so it's the whole science versus religion versus faith. This isn't really a possession, and then
that's a really good point. People are
levitating and shit.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I like that they have both those elements, because think about it. You would think it's psychological, right? You would never automatically go to possession.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it's discussed continuously in the film. So those discussions, they're interesting. They're not just rushing you to the tentpole moment of the possession. They're exploring those things.
Even showing the methods, the psychological methods they're taking to try to help her, like the shock treatments and all that kind of stuff to try to help with what was going on. And yeah, that's a good point.
And it's interesting because before The Exorcist, faith was dwindling, and I read somewhere that The Exorcist actually helped Catholicism.
Scared people back to the church.
Yeah, it made people believe in those kinds of things again a lot more. And in fact, there's been studies shown that when people say they're possessed, they tend to just mimic the stuff they see in possession films. And that's a big tell that they're
Interesting. That they're not really possessed.
That they're not really possessed. They're really kind of just doing what is it they think they should be doing as the person who's possessed. So it's super interesting the wake this film has, not just in horror cinema, but in like culture in general.
Right. Yeah, that's very true.
Are there any other scenes you want to talk about?
I don't think so. I mean, there's all those infamous scenes, of course, with the crucifix and all those things.
One of the things I loved too were all the Pazuzu moments where you see the other actress in the Pazuzu makeup, but it's subliminal in this cut. It's very subtle.
It's very subtle.
In the later director's cut, they added a bunch of it, and it got silly. It got really silly.
Yeah.
And again, the crab walk is not in this version, and I'm glad it's not, because it doesn't look real. You watch it again, and it looks like she's sitting on a platform and trying to walk, and then they sped up the film.
Yeah.
Now, if they would have used a contortionist or someone like that, and it looked completely solidly real, then I would have said, yeah, because conceptually this crab walk is cool, right?
It's creepy.
But this version of the film, there's nothing in it that doesn't look real to me.
I just don't think, even though I think it's creepy, maybe it doesn't look real, I just don't think it needs it. I think they, it stands on its own.
Yeah. The crescendo of dread is better without it, I think.
Yeah. And the other thing I will say, that's impressive is how Linda Blair and her dialogue, but it's other people's voices.
Yeah.
But the way she doesn't miss a beat, like you really feel like the voices are coming from her.
Yeah.
Not like a really voice actor or whatever. Yeah. Very well.
Yeah. A lot of other films have done this and not with the same result.
No. It looks like they're lip syncing or something.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's pretty great. Okay. Shall we go into the spoiler zone for Believer?
Exorcist Believer. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So, what did you want to talk about in the spoiler zone?
It was bad. I was just... Okay, so first of all, again, I know you probably get bored of me saying this. I never watched trailers.
Yeah, so you didn't know anything.
So I didn't know anything about it. We went through Horror Nights, Believers, didn't know what the hell was going on.
Yeah.
But what the little that I did know, like the two girls being possessed, the two little girls being possessed, I thought was really interesting concept. You and everyone else, Alex, Marco, everyone was saying how, it was you can't wait to see it because the trailer was so scary. So I was really excited to watch it, and then I was waiting. I was waiting to be scared or creeped out or something.
Again, I feel like their concepts worked against them. Their concepts are what initially got me excited. Mm-hmm. Like,
for sure.
The two girls, how interesting to see two possessed. Are the demons going to work together? No, they never did.
That's what I thought. That's what I was looking forward to.
Right. So it's like all this setup with no payoff.
Yeah.
And then it was interesting that when they go to fight the demon, they're like, fuck it. Let's just use everything. Let's use Catholicism. Let's use whatever, like early voodoo, type stuff. Let's use it all. Use it all. And no payoff.
Right.
There was no payoff to that.
But to go back a little bit, even with the setup, when they go in the woods and they, try to call up her mom or whatever they're doing.
Yeah.
And they ultimately they disappear.
Yeah.
But you really, not that I'm saying you should see all of it, but there wasn't even just like a little bit.
You got to see some of it. Yeah.
You know what I mean? There was no
no
there was they were just poof, they're gone.
Yeah. So again, great setup, no payoff.
Yeah.
Interesting that they would go out into the woods. Interesting that they would just be in this little cave hole. Mm-hmm. What did they see? No payoff.
Nothing.
You know what I mean?
Nothing. Not even a shadow.
Yeah. And then the two parents, the very religious parents.
Yeah.
And then the single dad who wasn't religious at all. No payoff. What payoff did we get from that?
Nothing.
Even
when the little girl goes down the aisle in the church.
Yeah.
Wasn't that great?
Right. The body and the blood. We still don't know what that means.
Right.
Are we going to find out in the third film? I will be so frustrated if that's the case. Ellen Burstyn, you're excited, you see her, you see what her history has been. She pretty much stops becoming this famous actress to pursue this other path, and no payoff.
Nothing.
She interacts with the demon one time, and she becomes blind. Like, so quickly. Like, you should have done...
2 seconds.
She could have become blind in the final scenes.
Sure.
Like, that would have been better.
Yeah, and I mean, it just didn't really add to anything either. Do you know what I mean? Like, it just didn't...
It set it up for when Reagan shows up.
Of course.
But they couldn't... They basically benched her for most of the film.
Yeah.
Maybe it was a contractual thing. I don't know.
Maybe. But I mean, it still could have been more interesting even if that were true.
Yeah. And then there were no perverse moments with the demon. There was only one that really stood out for me. If I'm wrong, maybe I forgot the others. That's not good.
That's not
if I forgot it, that means it's not good.
That's not a good sign.
The perverse scene I'm talking about is when one of the demons tells the nurse about her past as a nun and giving up the child, and then she starts to bleed.
Yeah, I forgot about that.
Like if she's having the miscarriage
the
herself.
The miscarriage, yeah.
That we needed lots more of that.
Yeah.
Because that's what the demon does. It like messes with you.
Yeah.
It fucks you up. It makes you feel like you're going insane. And there was none of that. There was not enough of that stuff. That's what makes you fear the demon. Yeah,
that's the thing. You never fear these two little girls.
Yeah.
You just don't.
It's too bad. And then the scene where they're placed together back to back. I was so happy they weren't in beds because we've seen
that wouldn't have been good.
It's so derivative. Every other movie, the possessed is always in a bed. But them back to back didn't do anything. They didn't work together. That's what I thought. I thought they were going to work together.
Me too.
The scene where the priest gets his head turned all the way around, it doesn't even seem like they're doing it.
I didn't think that looked very good either.
No, and it just didn't. You didn't fear the source.
No.
So it just felt strange. And then everyone throwing in the kitchen sink to try to fight them felt just sloppy and too much, trying to do too much and not doing anything.
Right.
Ultimately you're doing nothing.
Agreed.
So.
Yeah, I was just really looking forward. I felt like this was going to be like my Halloween new movie kickoff. And whamp.
Yeah, if you're
disappointed.
I think if you're going to get rid of Ellen Bernstein so quickly, then have Reagan show up sooner and be in half the movie.
Yeah.
That didn't even make sense either. Like Ellen Bernstein becomes blind and then all this stuff happens and then Reagan shows up. I'm sure the next movie it's going to be all her, and of course we're going to run out and see it. But yeah, this first film was not good at all. I would, when people were asking me what I thought, I said it's like a 5 out of 10.
That's being
which to me,
generous.
Yeah, I think for you it's probably lower, but
it's lower.
Yeah,
because also I understand setting up a trilogy, but that's not the way to do it.
Yeah. Well, I hope they learn from the bad reviews because they are getting trounced.
Getting pummeled.
Yeah. And I guess they're going to change directors for the next one.
Oh, okay.
So let's hope that they learn and the next one is better.
Yeah. Well, fingers crossed.
Cool. Okay, let's leave the spoiler zone.
Bye.
All right. So, is there anything else you want to say before we sign off?
Watch the original Exorcist on Max. It's so good.
So good.
You should watch it. Perfect for Halloween.
Yeah.
Fun and scary.
Very scary. Yeah. It'd be interesting to know what a young person thinks of that film. Young people have grown up with the photocopied version of that film.
Very true.
It's like this really faded version. Everything feels derivative because it comes from that.
Yeah.
But yeah, it'd be interesting to know what they think of it.
Well, if you saw Believer or the original Exorcist, let us know what you think.
We're on all the socials. We just got on TikTok. So search The Date Night Horror Show. And if you want to drop us a message, you can email us at thedatenightHorrorshow@gmail.com. I think we're done, babe.
Awesome. Scare you later.
The Date Night Horror Show is written and produced by Enzo and Reina. All music written and produced by Enzo. Follow the show on Facebook.com/The Date Night Horror Show. Find Enzo and Reina online at TheDateNightHorrorShow.com.